All right, we have everybody, and I presume prepared at 6 p.m. So we'll call the meeting to order. By way of introduction or reintroduction, start with myself, and then we have a new board attorney to introduce. So I'm Ed Kramer, Chairman of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
I'm Larry Beren, I'm Vice Chair of the board.
I'm Brenda Frazier, I'm board member.
And our new board attorney, Karen.
Aaron Roth, nice to be here.
First order of business then will be the approval of the minutes of our last meeting, which was the first part of this. This is a continuance. Has all the board members had a chance to read those minutes, and do I have a motion to approve?
I read it and I move adoption of the minutes of the last meeting.
Have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously approved. I will sign. Okay. This is a continuance of case number 21-01. An application by Cindy Young of Kreger Construction on behalf of property owners Paul A. and Megan E. McDonald, requesting approval of a variance to the required minimum least side yard setback of 8 feet in Article 7, R7500 Residential Zone 164-37C Bowlegged 1. Dimensional requirements of the city zoning ordinance in order to allow a new deck to be 3 feet from the property line to be located at 35 Westmoreland Street in Westminster, Maryland. I didn't let the staff reintroduce themselves, so let's do that and other parties, and then we'll go from there. Staff?
Mark Depot, the Director of Community Planning and Development. Andrew Gray, Comprehensive Planner for the City of Westminster.
Ms. Young?
Cindy Young, I'm in sales and customer service with Kreger Construction.
And your colleague there?
Steve Gamber, Project Manager for Kreger Construction.
And witnesses, we'll catch up with you in a moment. In as much as this is the continuance, I want to first ask, at the conclusion of the last meeting, it was apparent that Ms. Young and whomever else were going to meet with city staff to make sure that there was total awareness of the requirements that have to be met here per the code, per the zoning ordinance. I presume that meeting took place. We do have a pre-hearing statement, which has now been completed, unlike the first iteration. Ms. Young, have you received the city staff report?
I spoke with Andrew and Mark, an additional city a staff report.
Yes, a subsequent one for this particular meeting.
I'm sure I must have. Andrew, can you help me out with that?
That would have been sent to you on Friday morning.
Okay, if you can give me just a minute to look through that, would that be all right?
Yes. If it's all right with the board.
It's pretty comprehensive, and basically runs through the whole protocol of what is going to be required from your perspective. If you haven't seen that in advance, I guess I don't want to presume anything, but you hopefully are prepared to address all of the requirements that the board has to hear your testimony to.
Okay, well, I believe I covered everything in the pre-hearing statement, so I have a much better grasp on it than I did certainly the last time.
So in your opinion, you are prepared to proceed?
Yes,
Okay, is the board in agreement?
Yes. I mean, it's up to her. If she feels prepared, then let's, I guess, move forward.
All right. Okay. I just want to make sure that everybody else has received the staff report as well. So Andrew, do you want to highlight any portions of the staff report?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to remind all parties that the application was entered into the record as Exhibit 1, and the January staff report was entered into the record as Exhibit 2. Next. On November 30th, 2020, the applicant submitted a variance application to the board for the property located at 35 Westmoreland Street. On January 5th, 2021, the board convened to hear case number 2101. During that meeting, the Board of Zoning Appeals voted to continue the hearing for BZA case 2101 to today, Tuesday, February 2nd, 2021 at 6 p.m. in order to allow the applicant more time to provide additional information to city staff. Staff requested the applicant provide information related to zoning ordinance section 164, 161A3A prior to, during, and following the January 5th, 2021 hearing. The initial review of section 164, 161A3A was performed by staff in the BZA staff report dated January 5th, 2021. On January 19th, 2021, the applicant did provide the board a pre-hearing statement. However, the applicant did not provide information related to section 164, 161A3A, which covers the findings of the board in order to grant such a variance. Testimony today should include this needed information for the board. The applicant is requesting approval of a variance to the required minimum lease side yard setback of 8 feet along the northwest property line in order to construct a new deck located 3 feet from the northwest side property line pursuant to the zoning ordinance. The applicant has not demonstrated any unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty to justify the need for such a variance. Nothing would prevent the deck from extending from the existing porch on the southern corner of the home and extending around the rear of the house until the deck is approximately 8 feet from the property line per the zoning ordinance. The applicant has created the need for such a variance as a result of action taken by the applicant or a predecessor in interest of the property. City staff would also like to mention that the applicant could reconfigure the deck to help mitigate as much area protruding into the minimum required side yard setback as possible. The applicant and the board may discuss such reconfiguration of the proposed deck as an option and further mandate such new design as a condition for approval, only if the board agrees to such a condition. Such a design may involve the deck stepping away from the property line once one exits the single-family detached dwelling unit until it complies with the 8-foot minimum required side yard setback as specified in the ordinance. In conclusion, and I apologize, Mark, I forgot to say next for moving the slide, but we're down at the last slide, the recommendation. Zoning Administration recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals vote to deny the proposed variance due to the applicant demonstrating no unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty as specified in the zoning law as to why the proposed deck, as currently designed, must be located in the proposed minimum dimensional requirements for the property. Mr. Chair, if it's all right with you, I'd like to submit the continuance staff report in the record as Exhibit 3. And if you have any questions please let me know. And the applicant is also here to answer any question as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Entered as Exhibit 3. Yes, is that the right number, Karen? Exhibit 3 now?
Yes.
All right. Accepted as Exhibit 3. The board have any questions?
I don't.
Not yet, no.
Okay. All right, Ms. Young, if, as you go through your testimony, I would like to, for expediency, swear all people who will testify at one time. So if each of you would raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Officer McDonald? I need to hear an I do.
I do.
Okay, and Ms. Shipley?
I do.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Young, it's on you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So in regards to the building of the deck, which was stated in the staff report, where the deck cannot be built anywhere else on the back of the house than where we had it proposed for. There are other decks on similar homes in the area, similar to what we're trying to do there. It will only go in place of stairs that are already existing that were there when the McDonald's purchased the property. The home was built in 1923, and the home was already in non-conforming use as to when it was built, because it's within 3 feet from that side property line.
I have a question. As I'm looking at the picture that you submitted, the one that shows the side that you're proposing to build the deck on.
Right.
Is that part of the original house? Number one.
What do
Or
you,
was that added afterward?
that side is the original
Yeah,
house.
that's the original.
Okay. And what is it immediately to the right of that, the little area that juts out? Well, it's not little, it's 6'4". But what is that area that's in between that and the other side?
I'm not sure what room that
I
is.
know wall.
Where-
Can we ask Mr. McDonald that, Paul?
Yeah, if I could step in here, and just as a notice, if any of you guys hear radio or something going on, I apologize.
Okay.
So that 6'4" little jut out right there is our laundry room. There is a door
Okay.
that exits to the south of the property, like I guess to the left, opposite of where the deck is.
Right.
But as you can see, there's a garage there, or what used to be a garage, it's now a shed. And if we were to build the deck off of that, there wouldn't be much room there to, I guess, get between the deck and the shed. So that's why we couldn't build it on that side.
And
If that
is
makes
it the
sense.
far side, Officer McDonald, that far side where it's kind of next in it? I mean, is there a door there? I mean, there's stairs there, so I presume there's a door there.
Yes, there is a door there.
Was any consideration at all given to try to do it on that side of the house?
Honestly, not really, because just the amount of space between where the steps are, and where the garage, the front of the garage and where the doors are there, it just wouldn't leave much room. It didn't seem practical to put a deck there because it wouldn't leave much room to be able to it was just all too close together. Like you wouldn't be able to get a lawnmower out of the front of the shed and go into the backyard to mow. And it just seems more practical to put it on the other side because that's where there's French doors, and it just seems that would be a good spot for it.
Got it. Is the garage used as a garage, or you said you're now calling it a shed?
It is used as a shed. I have, just lawnmower and outdoor equipment in there, things of that nature, my kids' toys. That's about it.
Okay. All right, I have no further questions. Go ahead, Ms. Young.
Yeah, and I believe where I left off was that there wasn't really anywhere else to put the deck on the back of the house that would be logical to the flow of living. And as it's a rental property on the side in question, and there doesn't seem to be any opposition to it being there. The McDonald's are just, a family with a small child. It's just to have some space that, for their family to enjoy at the end of the day, weekends. And as I said, I believe in my pre-hearing statement, to have some outdoor space that definitely, would be beneficial with the COVID pandemic that we're living through right now. And again, it's not going to cause any negative impact on neighbors or surrounding properties. There's no issue with generating additional traffic or anything of that nature. And it would add value to the property, which again helps the town surrounding. So it's a benefit. I don't see anything that would be detrimental to anyone for this deck to be built here.
This is Larry Barrent, board member. Ms. Young, or maybe Mr. McDonald as a better person, when was that garage built? Did you buy the house with the garage as is?
Yes, sir. So we bought the house in 2016, and somebody had bought it, renovated it, and then we bought it. The garage was already there, so I'm assuming that it was. You can definitely tell it's older by walking inside. I'm assuming that maybe it was built with the house in 1923.
Well, I'm interrupting here, so Mr. Chairman, if I
Go ahead, Larry. I was
Okay.
going to ask if there are any other questions.
Yeah, Mr. McDonald, the city has provided us in its staff reports some items or images off of Google Maps. And the question I have, I guess, is first of all, what is the configuration on the backside of your house? You've got a laundry room there, and I guess the double doors go into a living space or a dining room. Could you just tell me what's on the back of the house there?
Yes, sir. So on the back of the house now, that picture that's on that is old. That's before the guy bought it and flipped it. But essentially, there's that little 6 foot 4 inch jut out that you see on the picture on the right, which is the laundry room. Just to the right of that is a small little porch with some steps leading down to the garage area, I'll call it. And then to the left, there's a set of French doors, and essentially what are, like, I guess for lack of a better term, contractor steps that I believe that he put on there, or maybe they were already there in lieu of putting a deck in. They're just like a set of wooden steps that don't really particularly look great. And that's it.
Okay, just a couple other quick questions here. Your neighbor to the right, looking at the one picture where your boat is there, are you able to see, or first of all, do you know the people?
Yes, sir. So that's Miss Jan Shipley, and she's here on the call tonight.
Okay, well, I'll wait for her testimony.
Okay.
Thanks.
I have one question, and maybe I'm oversimplifying, but it's already 3 foot for the house, and we're just extending the deck, and it'll just be it's staying the same distance away from the property as the house is. Am I correct?
You are correct in that, ma'am. It will not be, I guess, aggressing the property line anymore. It's just coming
Any more
straight
than it already is? Okay.
Not anymore. The steps will not be going off of the deck. The steps will not be going towards the property line. And we can even move them. They're supposed to come straight off the back of the deck, but we could even move them to come off the right side of the deck if that would please the board more. So yes.
Thank you.
Officer McDonald, what is in the house where the door off to those steps on the left there?
Sorry, you're kind of breaking up, but I believe you were asking what's the setup on the inside of the house where the French doors are at. That is
Correct. Yes.
It's a dining room.
Okay.
It's all one room because it's part of our kitchen, but that's where our dining room table is.
Got it. Okay, Ms. Young, you want to proceed and call your witnesses, however you were going to question them?
Have a preference as to order, anybody? Can I just have Steve, you want to talk next to Paul?
However order you
can,
want to do it
yes.
in,
Pardon me?
whatever order you would like to do it in.
Okay, guess we should finish with you.
Okay. I just wanted to say something in regards to where it's at 3 foot off the property line. Is it the property line?
Mhm.
It's actually going to be a little more than that. It's going to be like 3 foot 6 inches. So it's actually going to be in from where the existing house is now. So it's not exactly coming off the very edge of the house. It's going to be sitting in about 6 inches. So it's going to be like 3 foot 6 inches, if that makes a difference.
Got it. Anything else?
No, that's all I have.
Let's have Paul, would you like to speak now? And then we'll finish with Jan.
Yeah, I'll just say a quick piece. I kind of already said a lot, but just for, I guess, just for the board and everybody to know, we don't really have much. There's not much living space outside of the house as it is right now. Since we've moved in, we've tried to do some updates just to make the house more functional. And adding the deck it'd be a great benefit to us because we'd finally have some outdoor living space for the back of our house. As right now it stands, it's just all grass and it's not really as practical as we'd like it to be. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, can we have Jan speak now? As far as Jan, do you feel any negative impact towards you as a neighbor or any other neighbors for the McDonald's to have this deck?
No, can you hear me? Oh, there I am.
Yes, we can hear it.
I don't see you, but I can hear you.
I'm here. So, I mean, because I live on the opposite side, and I do understand, I think that a deck would be really adding to the value of the home, and also for them to be able to have like outdoor time. And I do totally agree with the fact that his shed there's really not as much room between the shed and the back steps, I guess, where they come out of the laundry room. And I think that it would not bother me at all. I think it would be really great for them to have that little bit of an extension. And I also, I've only lived here 4.5 years, but I noticed that the people on the opposite side, nobody is ever outside. They just don't seem to use their property like that because it is a rental. I can't see where it would be a hardship on anyone. So anything else you want me to say? Or any other questions for me?
I have a question. This is a Chair Ed Kramer. I'm looking at this picture that's on the screen there, the back of the house. And Ms. Shipley, which side, right or left, are you talking from? Where's your home? You've muted yourself. Ms. Shipley, you're muted.
I
Oh, there you go.
am on the east side.
So you're, as I'm looking at the back of the house, you're to the right.
If you're standing in the alley and looking at the house, I'm to the right, correct?
Okay, good.
Ms. Shipley, this is Larry Barrent again. I have a question.
Sure.
Looking at your backyard, which obviously you can't see here, do you have any, you have your house, do you have any deck or patio or anything that comes out the back of your house?
Yes, I do. I have a deck.
And which side of your house, which side of your property does it come out? Does it come out towards Mr. McDonald's property or on the other side?
It's probably closer to the other side. As a matter of fact, I'm very close to the other side. I'm sure it's within less than 3 feet.
So the one side of your deck, or I guess it's a deck, would be with your other neighbor, would be within the 8-foot setback line on your side of the property. Is that correct?
When you say within, I'm not sure.
It's beyond, it's closer than 8 feet to your property line on.
Definitely, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming, Andrew, the landlord, the owner of the house on the left side, they've been contacted and no response, correct?
All adjacent neighbors have been contacted with the certified mailing, and I have not heard anything.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Shipley, I'm sorry, Ms. Young, this Chair Kramer again. You say that there are other houses in the area that have decks. Were you a party to constructing those decks, or is it just your observation? And how are they positioned in relation to what you're proposing here for Officer McDonald's house?
Well, I mean, there's numerous decks, like, including the next door neighbor, but I mean, all within city limits that are definitely non-conforming based on today, the standards in place today as they were when these homes were built a very long time ago. I mean, Mr. McDonald's shed, in fact, is pretty close to the property line, and I'm sure is also non-conforming. I guess it's just a matter of that's the way it is when things change over the years from being built in the early 1900s to now. So, but no, I'm not, because we built the decks in the area. No, right. It's just my observation.
Okay. Ms. Shipley, let us know when you think you're done with your presentation. I think probably the board may have some additional questions, but do you have anything
Ms.
else you
Young?
want to add?
Oh, are you speaking to me? Sorry, I had to get my charger.
No, I'm sorry. I keep missaying and said I mean Miss Young.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Kramer, unless you or someone else on the board has questions for us, I do feel like we've covered what you were looking for. But please, if you have anything to ask that I didn't, I would be happy to answer it.
Yeah, I have a couple questions for Ms. Young.
Go ahead.
Yeah, under the zoning ordinance 164-169, there are certain factors that this court may use, and as opposed to all of them, but some of them we may use as factors and make our decision, and that would be under B, section B, and I guess you've got them there. Thanks, Andrew. I have a couple that I just need answers for. And I'm looking at number 4, the effect of such use upon the peaceful enjoyment of people in their homes. I believe you and Mr. McDonald and Ms. Shipley have all answered that one for me. I don't know, do you have any other comments on that particular factor that we need to consider? Ms. Young?
Believe it's definite, the effect is a good effect on the benefits for the McDonald family to have the peaceful enjoyment in their home, and they're not going to be having, that's for their family. And again, the rental next door, as the other neighbor stated, they really don't use their yard. So I
Okay.
would.
Didn't mean to interrupt you. And again, this seems obvious to you, but it's one of the potential factors we may consider, and that's number 7, the most appropriate use of land and structure. And I think the witnesses have already answered that. Does you or Mr. McDonald have any thing to add to the testimony you've already given?
If I may speak first before Paul, there's really not a better place to put the deck on that would make logical sense for this property. To try to put it anywhere else just is not practical. It's not conducive to everyday living, and there truly is nowhere else for it.
Okay.
So, Paul, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate. It appears like there should be a deck there. So I would say, in answer to number 7, the most appropriate use of land and structures, just by the design of the house and the yard, it appears like if you were going to put something there, a deck would be the most appropriate thing. Not sure if that helps at all, but.
No, it does. And I just jumped down to 14. Again, I think I have answers from the witnesses so far, but traffic conditions, including facilities for pedestrians such as sidewalks, safety zones, parking facilities available, and the safe access of cars to highways and roads. I don't think this will affect anything in that area unless you think otherwise. Ms. Young?
I definitely do not think otherwise. They have a fenced yard. This deck will be off the back of their house within their fenced yard. It's not going to impede or have anything to do with the traffic or people walking around.
Okay, and one last question on number 15, the contribution, if any, that such proposed use, building, or addition would make toward the deterioration of areas and neighborhoods. And Ms. Young, I think you and I think Mr. McDonald have already given testimony on this point. Do you have anything else? Either one of you?
I believe it will add value and will not, it will not have anything towards any sort of deterioration. If anything, it will make it improved and better, and not that the McDonald's are planning to move, but it's a good use of that area, since it definitely looks like it should be there anyway. And I would think intentions were, with the stairs that are already in existence, they were planning to do something like this, whoever owned it previously.
Okay.
So it's logical and sensible and definitely a plus.
I think that's all the question I have for the witnesses at this time.
I was happy to hear Larry go through those criteria. I had one additional one, number 2, which is the orderly growth of the community. When I look at the picture that was in the staff report, obviously all of those homes, to me, obviously, were built in maybe the same time frame. It's like a whole development and all those homes look pretty close together. So looking at number two, the orderly growth of a community, I'm looking at that as a kind of a smaller community or development within the larger community, if you will. If other people were to request decks, patios, whatever, and they all bumped up against the 3-foot line of their property, would the McDonald's have any objection, or Ms. Shipley have any objection to that happening on either side of them?
No objection.
Yep. Sorry, Jan.
Well, go ahead, Officer McDonald, go first.
Yeah, I wouldn't have any objection.
Ms. Shipley? You gotta unmute yourself, please. There you
Good. I have no objection.
Back to Ms. Young, when you, again, there are other houses in the area that have decks. How many are within this, on that same side of the street? Or, well, let's say within 3 or 4 houses? Are there any on those houses that you're aware of?
My apologies. No, I did not count and check with the houses.
Okay.
I-
I have some additional concerns, I guess I'll use the term concerns, in that, going back to my opening salvo about seeing the current staff report, which is really pretty consistent with the staff report in our first iteration here last month, in that what the board has to look at in order to be able to make a determination as on this variance. And in addition to the part of the criteria that Mr. Barrett referred to, 164-169, there's a whole section 164-161, A, bow-legged 3, and then A underneath that says such variances shall be authorized by the board only upon the finding by the board that. And there are 3 very specific conditions. And this is what concerns me, is that to the extent that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question, I would generally agree with Mr. Barrett that given the location of the deck and the orientation of the property and the existing structure, that perhaps the deck makes the most sense to go on that side of the house. But again, even though it's going to be in an additional 6 inches, butting right up against that 3-foot side that of the property, and that certainly does not meet the 8-foot. But to the extent that you've now talked to that issue, I think that one, in my view, seems to be met. Number 2, such variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of the substantial property rights possessed by other properties in the same zone and in the same vicinity. And that's the reason I asked the question about whether or not you all, Officer McDonald and Ms. Shipley, as giving testimony here and as the owner, if other people were to ask for the same kind of variances with similar property lines, that there would be no objection. And again, this was kind of tangentially addressed. However, you see that city staff making this pretty strong argument that there would be nothing to prevent the deck from extending from the porch side to the other side corner of the other side of the house. So it's really important that the applicant create the need for variance as a result of action that you take to really seal it here. And then number 3, the authorizing of such variance will not be a substantial detriment to adjacent properties and will not materially impair the purpose of this chapter or the public interest. Which means, in essence, my interpretation, if we give this variance to you, then kind of set a precedent for having to be as, to consider favorably other variances that will be perhaps very similar. You know, the zoning ordinances are there to make it equal for everyone. So in our determination, we have to drill down and make sure that we receive the type of testimony that will convince the board that you've met all of those criteria. Having said all of that, is there anything else that you, Ms. Young, want to add, or have the people you have with you to testify add?
I don't,
I can step in here if that's okay.
Sure.
So I would just like to reiterate about, you know, quality of life for neighbors and setting the precedent for other homes in the area. I think there are other homes in the area. I'm unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to give house numbers or specific examples, which I know doesn't help a lot, but it's that area being an older area of Westminster, and I believe that there are other things that have already been probably within that 8-foot variance that are already there. Also, the fact that, you know, on a case by case basis on these type of things having to be looked at, I think the fact that we already have a fence there and the deck not encroaching that property line any further from the original structure, I think that taking all those things into consideration, I don't think that the precedent that to be set would be a bad one. I think that's it.
Okay.
and if I could add to that, I am also a licensed real estate agent in the area and have been for many years. And I will say, in order to maintain and create better value, it's very logical and I think needed for allowing people, younger people, and growth in a good way, and taking care and updating older properties, that it's definitely a plus and a positive for this town of Westminster. And, you know, I just feel it brings something in by allowing people to make better use of their space. It's good business, I believe, for the town. It's a win for the families that would want to buy something that may be somewhat of a fixer-upper, that they would have the ability to add space, maybe not any huge addition for living space, but a deck is I believe, a reasonable thing for the family to have, and, you know, to enjoy their outside space.
And can I say something? As a neighbor, I mean, I bought my house with my deck, and if there's 2 feet between my deck and my fence, it might be 2.5 feet, but that's all. So I don't ever see that being a problem. My neighbors on the other side of me don't see that as a problem, but somehow that was passed. So, you know, just like, it must be an okay thing to do. I don't know. This is all new to me, but I would have no issues with the McDonald's having that deck over there. I mean, they're very nice people. I don't know if that plays into it at all, but Anyway, I'm just saying that I know my deck on the other side, the east side of my deck is, there's two little trees there, bushes, but I could reach across my deck and hand them a soda in my, so that's pretty close. But that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. I guess, Ms. Young, as we typically do, unless the board has any other questions at this time, we would ask you if you want to make a closing statement, and then we will close testimony and the board will deliberate and toward a decision.
Okay, well, are there any questions of us?
Ms. Young?
I was asking if anybody had any questions for us before.
I don't.
I don't.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
may I ask a question based upon what you all have been discussing? I just might help you before you close the record.
okay, certainly, Tim.
So there has been testimony tonight that there is not enough room between the south side steps and the garage. Does anybody know what that distance is between those steps and the garage?
I do. I have a rough estimate. I would say that it's approximately 10 feet.
10 feet. All right. And then from the north, I think it's the north side of the house to the French doors, what is that dimension? Are you aware?
So, sorry. You're talking about from the edge of the house to the French doors?
Correct.
I could give you a rough estimate. I would say, let me see here if I can zoom in on this picture. It might be 2 feet, maybe a little less, 1.5 feet.
About 2 feet.
Maybe somewhere in that range, between 1 foot and 2 feet.
So if you were to step the deck in 2 feet, you could move a little bit closer towards meeting the setback requirement.
I think we might be able to move a little bit closer. I'd have to relook at the.
Mr. McDonald, you are on mute.
Sorry about that. I believe we might be able to take it to 4 feet, because there's a downspout right at the edge of the house, and so that's why we're moving inside of that about 6 inches. We might be able to move it another 6 inches and take it to about 4 feet off the property line. I believe that's probably about as far as we could go.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, back to Ms. Young. Do you want to make any kind of a closing statement?
Well, I would just like to say that I don't truly believe there's any negatives to allowing this variance for this property. Again, other people have them in the neighborhood, in the area, in the town, and I only see a positive for the property value for the family that's there now, for families to come down the road. I understand your concern. You don't want people on top of each other, but it's happening. They need the space. I think it's, will keep people that will want to purchase in the area if you allow. I mean, I'm not saying they shouldn't have to present a case on it, but I truly don't see any negatives for allowing this to be approved. And quite honestly, even as far as trying to move it in, I think it's going to make it a pretty narrow area coming out the door. So I believe you should approve it as it is without any changes to it, because I'm afraid they're not going to be happy with it being less in width than what we propose. And anything else to say?
No.
I believe that's about all I can think to say right now. I appreciate your time and
Okay. Does the board have any other questions at this point?
I don't.
I don't. I think everything's been answered.
The only other thing I guess I would add at this point, too, and based along the lines of the questioning from our attorney, Ms. Ruff, when you look at that space between the edge of the building where the downspout comes down to the left of the doors, there's also a light fixture in there as well. Of course, the deck probably wouldn't impede that at all. I just think from a symmetry point of view, while it's nice to kind of gain a little bit of goodwill dimension there, could go either way. At any rate, I have no further questions at this point. So with that, we will close the testimony.
Chair
And-
Kramer,
I'm sorry. Yeah, we have to come back. I'm sorry. I have to come back to staff.
the staff can have a chance for rebuttal.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, Mark.
That's okay. Just two quick points. And Ms. Shipley, I'm sorry, and I hope this is incorrect because I really enjoy when neighbors and people come out to speak. We could not locate a building permit for the deck on Ms. Shipley's property to determine whether it was approved legally. So we were aware that it's closer, but we could not find that it was ever obtained the proper building permit. So had she would have had to request a variance as well. 44 Westmoreland, it's across the street. They did obtain a building permit. They do have a deck. It's more centrally located and it looks like it meets the 8-foot setbacks. A lot of the houses back here does not appear they have decks. Certainly it's something I would see expanding, but just to answer some of the questions that were brought up about the neighborhood itself. And I hope I'm wrong, but we could not find the building permit for the deck, Ms. Shipley. And with that, I think what Ms. Ruff was referring to, and what staff also provided in the staff report, is looking at a way to minimize the overall impact of the area that's being requested for the variance. And that's where the step back was talked about for the deck. Ms. Ruff mentioned actually moving the entire deck a foot or two. We were looking at more of a step back approach where we would minimize the area variance. But again, that was discussed throughout the meeting, the difficulty the applicant may have. I just wanted to point those two aspects out. And Andrew, I don't know if you have anything else.
Yes, the only thing I would just like to mention, which would come right from the annotated code of Maryland, is a variance may only be allowed where owing to conditions peculiar to the property and not because of an action taken by the applicant. A literal enforcement of the zoning law would result in unnecessary hardship or practical difficulties as specified in the zoning law. I just wanted to throw that back out, straight definition right from the Maryland state law.
And Mr. Kramer, may I ask staff to go down to the picture that shows the French doors? Not this one, it's back, it's down lower in the staff report. I forget which page it's on, but it's a single picture of the back of the house.
I think it's on the submission.
Is it on the submission?
I believe so.
There you
Yeah.
go. Okay.
Yep.
So I just thought that it would help in the discussion when we were talking about either one, stepping it in a little bit or completely, relocating it to meet the setback requirement.
Well, that's the picture I've had in front of me the whole time here. In terms of trying to understand together with a little drawing where they added the deck as they're proposing it. So, I mean, I think I'm pretty clear in my mind about how this would be positioned.
If I may say, the home is the way it is built with the doors where they're at, putting that deck on the other side or anywhere else would be quite awkward. It just is, it wouldn't not make any sense for this house. It would not be usable space on the other side. Their family is not going to come out and run right into their shed. It's not logical. This coming out of the dining room adds to the flow and is logical and makes sense. But as far as living now and resale down the road, that would be pretty awkward.
Well, let me ask one other question that just occurred to me. I mean, when I look at the depth of the property that's in the survey drawing, I'm reading that as 150 feet. Any thought given to the possibility of moving that shed further back that would allow perhaps for the deck to come off the other side? But again, what's inside the door on that side of the house? Does it make any sense to lead out that side of the house to a deck?
Well, Mr. Kramer, you're talking about moving a structure that was probably built in the 1920s. As it sits now, we know it's already non-conforming. My concern to even get into that, the cost, getting equipment back there to move that, and then where would it be placed due to it? I think that may open another can of worms for these homeowners. I'm not sure that.
So in other words, you would consider that a hardship?
I definitely would consider that a hardship, yes.
Okay. Once again, staff have any further comment? If not, then we will close testimony and go to deliberation.
I have nothing else.
Okay,
I have nothing else either, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
thank you. All right, well, testimony is closed. The board have anything they would like to discuss before making a recommendation or a motion?
Yeah, Larry Baran here, board member. A couple of things from the testimony, and I think following up on the shed there, what was a garage. You know, if you look at the either the photos or the drawing itself, I mean, first of all, putting a deck outside of a laundry room to me doesn't make sense. Trying fitting it in around an existing shed, I think would be very difficult. You know, apparently the doors open towards the house, so they would have to either replace the shed or change the door configuration. The fact that what they're proposing is coming out of a living area like the dining room does make sense. I frankly don't have any, as long as the construction doesn't extend beyond the outside of the existing walls of the house on that side, I don't really have any problem. I think that, you know, I think the applicant has shown, well, I'm satisfied with the answers I got in reference to 164, 169, section B, subsection B. So I'm comfortable with those responses. And I think if there's any unnecessary hardship or practical difficulty, I don't think it was of the applicant's making. I think the shed was there when they got there. I think the fact that, this is just my opinion, putting a deck outside the laundry room isn't the best use of the space. Let's see if I have any other points. And, Ms. Shipley has indicated that her patio, whether it's a non-conforming use or whether there was a permit in it's not relevant to this case. The fact is that it does exist, and testimony indicates that other dwellings in this neighborhood have similar setback issues in terms of decks or patios, which I guess have been addressed because they have them. So from my perspective, and unless I hear something else, I don't have any problem approving a variance as requested by the applicant, so long as it does not, go in further than the one side of the house into the 8-foot setback area.
Okay. Ms. Fraser?
I have to, that was my question earlier. We've already have a house that's only 3 foot away. It wasn't the homeowner's fault that the house was built there. Makes no sense to put a deck anywhere else or to ask him to attempt to move a 100-year-old or 90-year-old shed. I don't think that would be even feasible to do. So I have absolutely no questions or issues with, as long as what Larry said, we maintain the same distance as what the house is. So I'm comfortable with everything I've heard.
Likewise, I think we've covered all the ground necessary. I guess part of my thought process, however, it was goes back to everyone involved as parties to this case in terms of the presentation on behalf of the applicant, in terms of looking at all aspects of the code and making sure that those areas are addressed. Given that we have seen, and in this older area, similar setbacks where there really isn't much wiggle room at all. 6 inches here, another 6 inches there. And given the configuration of this particular home, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, even though it would be a faith effort to do a little bit. But materially, I don't think it really upsets the purpose of the ordinances as they are. And the house is a non-conforming use the way it is. So I'm okay with the proposed variance as submitted by the applicant as well. And I would make a motion that we approve this variance as proposed by the applicant.
Mr. Kramer, before you get a second on that motion, could I also request that you make an affirmative finding that the applicant has met the requirements of 164, 161 as well?
I guess in terms of stating that they have met the requirements. Is that what you're saying, Karen?
Right. So with respect to variances, it's the applicant's responsibility to establish how they've met the criteria. And when the board is going to issue a decision, we have to address each of the criteria and say how they have been met. So I just want to make sure we have enough information, and the motion states that so that we can have that in the decision.
Okay, I think I understand. So I will rephrase the motion, recommending approval based on the applicant having met the requirements of 161-164A3A1 with regard to exceptional extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question. And that is that given the location of the shed, as opposed to the staff's recommendation that there is no reason not to consider putting it on the other side. I think the applicant has met the requirement that says it would be difficult and unusual to have a deck come off the other side of the house. With regard to two, that the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property rights. Again, given this type of home, given the age of the home, and given its condition as purchased, this is allowing the property owner to have enjoyment, and part of owning property is to make improvements to better enjoy the property they purchased. And to three, that authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment or adjacent properties, as testimony has given. I think that was clearly met. The latter part, and will not materially impair the purpose of this chapter. I think we have heard testimony that results in the fact that while it's pretty clear that this particular property does not meet the 8-foot step back, it didn't meet it from the get-go. I mean, it was there and established as a non-conforming use. So given all of that, still, I think by virtue of the testimony we've heard, I think the recommendation to approve is worthy. And to that effect, if I've met the requirements there, then do I have a second?
I will second that.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous approval. Then I would thank everyone. Is there any notice of further action at this time from staff?
No, Mr. Chair, none from me.
Okay.
And I have nothing.
I would,
Ms. Ruff, given that you are new with us, do we want to make an estimate of time frame to have the decision prepared?
Well, I understand that generally speaking, the decisions are written and circulated to the board within 2 weeks. And will the board review it, or will it come back to them at the next meeting for its review and approval formally by motion?
Well, in the past, we have done that. When you send it to us, the board, and we've reviewed it and provided any potential changes to that, and then basically have voted for approval. We can bring it to a meeting if that's a procedure we want to go forward with. I guess that's a decision for the board to make. The board got any comments to that effect in terms of bringing decisions as proposed by our new attorney to have them approved at the next meeting?
Maybe I didn't understand, but if that means we don't get it ahead of time to review it and look at it, I would recommend that we stay with the ability to do that prior to the meeting. And maybe I missed the question, but.
No, you would get it in advance. I would say that within 2 weeks, we could issue the decision to circulate it amongst the board. The question would be, would it come before the board at a meeting for it to formally approve the written decision, as opposed to it just being circulated and approved and issued without a formal motion approving how it's written?
I would defer to Mark to see how you would prefer that if.
I'm more on the side of transparency, and I like the idea that it comes back to the next meeting for final approval. It gives the board one final say, and it also notifies the public that it was actually adopted and signed. A lot of times when we get these, it is signed and the public is unaware of it happening. I just think this is more, and it's more typical that I've noticed with other BZA jurisdictions I've worked with, that they bring it back in the subsequent meeting, final approval. But it doesn't keep you from looking at it and finalizing it, as Karen had mentioned. So that process remains the same. I just look at more formal, that it comes back to the next meeting.
I guess the only question I have, and I think that's the way we've been doing it, but it just hits me. Suppose it's February now, and suppose under normal circumstances, we would approve it at the March meeting, but suppose we have no other business and we wait till April, and now, these folks are into April and they haven't even started construction yet.
We would bring it back. We would add this as the agenda item.
No, what I'm saying though is if that would mean that they would be out 2 months instead of 1 month in terms of their ability to start construction.
No, the following month, this would be the only thing on the agenda next month if we had no other business.
Okay,
So we would be meeting next month solely for this case, unless there was something else that we had, but I don't believe we have anything else coming up next month.
No, nothing on the agenda right now.
I would just suggest that we do since we're already going to set up a meeting with our new attorney, at some point, we ought to discuss this, procedurally, within our group, just to make sure we haven't let anything slip. Initially, it's okay on Zoom to bring everybody together. Trying to get everybody together at Emerald Lane may be another issue. Again, that's a discussion offline for another time, but I think we ought to take that into consideration.
Absolutely. And the plan is for next month is to have as part of the next month's meeting, also a discussion with Ms. Ruff and the Board of Zoning Appeals. So we are scheduling that for next month's meeting. So
Okay.
we were intending the next month anyway.
Thank you.
All right, I'm very quickly trying to look at our procedures, order and procedures, and
Can I make a suggestion? And I don't mean to, I can't imagine right now the homeowner and Cindy, and do they need to stay on or can they go?
I think this somewhat impacts them. I mean, this month, we can follow how we've always done. And then following next month's meeting discussion, we can bring this up again. I'm okay with that as well. I do think we should lead towards this kind of openness meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe in this case, we just follow as we have in the past.
yeah, I was just going to say, I think we should just go with what we've been doing so that there's no further delay. And in as much as March right now is open, hopefully it stays open, then we can talk this out at that meeting, or even add it to the agenda, depending on what the case is for that matter.
Okay.
Yeah, I think with this being continued from last month, that makes sense.
Okay, so then giving notice to the applicants, then our attorney will provide a draft decision to the board. The board will review to see if everybody is agreement. And then we'll provide it back to the city, and the city will provide notice of the final approval.
Yes, and Mr. Chair, if I may, once the decision is finalized, then the Carroll County building permit can be approved, but not until then. And then, Mr. McDonald, just to let you know, once the ground thaws out a little bit more, we'll be by to pick up the sign.
I think okay. All right, anything else at this point? If not, then we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.